Good afternoon. As of right now, if you need to be downtown, you need to be ready to identify yourself.
That's right, because police have some new powers. If you are within 5 meters of the outside of the security fence, you're going to be asked for ID. If you refuse, you can walk away and leave the area, but if you refuse and you stay, you could be arrested. CTV's Paul Bliss joins us now from Queen's Park. Paul, you were just down at police headquarters where Chief Blair was speaking with reporters, and the chief says these arrest powers are not new. They go back to perhaps 1939.
Yeah, the chief and I had a bit of an exchange going this morning because I was trying to get clarification from him. The act that grants the police these powers has been in effect for decades. However, these powers were only granted to police on June the 2nd. But the problem was it was done without police or the government notifying anybody. Essentially what happened is the chief went to the politicians, the Liberal government at Queen's Park, and said, I need special permission under an act that the government has. It's called the Public Works Protection Act. He says, I want to be able to arrest anyone within 5 meters of the fence if they don't provide proper identification, if they don't allow me to do a search.
We can ask them to leave, and as you all now know, we have the authority to ask them to leave the interior of the perimeter area and 5 meters from that fence. But
you're within 5 meters of this wall, so please turn off your video camera.
We can't film within 5 meters of the wall?
That's correct.
Okay.
Public Works Act states that, so please. Because we're show your identification of these officers.
On Tuesday, it emerged that special police powers that the media reported had been given to police for the duration of the summit, powers that the Globe and Mail suggested were unlimited, had in fact never been given. Although a temporary regulation was passed in secret on June 2nd, making the fenced-off security zone around the summit subject to the Ontario Public Works Protection Act, the so-called 5-meter zone that supposedly gave police the right to demand identification from anyone within 5 meters of the fence never existed. When asked on Tuesday if the 5-meter rule had been in effect, Toronto Police Chief Bill Blair said, quote, "No, but I was trying to keep the criminals out." End quote.
This is pretty dramatic stuff, because the law was not only passed in secret, but it was kept secret. This is the stuff that Kafka wrote novels about. Secret laws that the citizenry isn't aware of are the hallmarks of tin pot dictatorships.
let me clarify it for you. By all means, if someone comes to the fence and seeks entry, they will be asked to identify themselves. If they refuse, and they have a right to refuse, then they may leave. And they will leave without being arrested. If, on the other hand, they try to force their way in, they can be prevented from entering. That's a very different thing than what you have described.
So they're asking you for ID for walking in a public space?
Yeah. It's actually under the Public Works Protection Act, okay?
Okay.
Anyone within this perimeter.
So by law, you can ID anybody you want?
Yes, that's right. Can I have your ID, please?
I refuse to give you my ID.
Okay. You're going to have to identify yourself to me, sir. Right, I explained it to you. You're within a public works protection area, okay?
Yeah.
Under that act, you have to identify yourself.
So if I show you my ID, are you going to write down my information?
Yes, I will.
So everybody that comes through here, do you write down their information?
Listen, I need to see your ID.
It's not that you need to ID me.
Yes, I do.
No, it's against my rights. I don't have to show you.
I'm not. Listen, okay. This is the way it happens, okay? If you don't identify yourself to me, then under that act, I'm gonna have to arrest you.
Arrest me for not showing ID?
That's right. So I need to see your ID right now.
So what if I came out right now and if I didn't have ID? Like, look at these people that are walking by us at the same time that you're asking me for ID.
Listen.
Yeah, because I'm taking a picture of what's going on while the cameras are on us, the public. But we can't film see what's going on.
I've explained it to you already.
So these people are walking by. Do you guys have ID? You're all supposed to have ID to show the police. They're gonna arrest me for not showing ID.
Are you gonna provide ID to me?
No, I want to actually document this. I'm a documentary filmmaker.
I need your ID.
I can show you my ID, yes.
Okay, then show it to me.
But I refuse to, and you're forcing me from my own free will to show ID.
Under duress.
Under duress, here, hold this. So I want to document this stuff. This is out of hand. Of course I can show ID, but I refuse to. This is interrogation. These are against my freedoms and rights as a person, God-given rights.
Have either of you guys been in trouble with the police before?
Never. I don't have to go on a record. So they can have all their cameras, 77 cameras looking at us, but when we point it on them, then they interrogate us. That's the psychological aspect of it.
There's no official protest here today yet. The big one is tomorrow, but already we're seeing some evidence that police are using that new power that they have under the new regulation. Joining us now is Tara. You were here in the park earlier. What happened to you? Did police say something about this new rule?
Well, basically, we had just met in the middle of the park. We sat down to exchange some phone numbers, and within about 10 seconds, about 10 police officers had surrounded us, had basically asked us to open our bags so they could search them. And my two friends said they did not consent to the search, and they enacted basically the new Public Works Act. And said you have to basically open your bags and we have to be able to search them. So they searched our bags, also asked for our identification, and wrote down all of our identification as well as phone numbers.
When they mentioned this new Public Works Act, what did they say about it? Did they say, well, we can arrest you, or what?
They basically told us that it allowed them to open anything and search anything on public grounds. As to what public grounds means, they weren't really clear, but they said anything that was considered a public place, they could ask for identification and could search us.
Well, what about the fact that there is no fence here? I mean, a lot of the explanation was that if you're within 5 meters of the fence, you could be searched. There's no fence here.
I'm not sure why exactly we were searched. And in fact, there was no fence here. I haven't seen a fence for at least a couple kilometers. So I'm not quite sure why we're being searched here or why there is so much police presence. But we definitely, this act was invoked on us.
What this legislation does on its face is that it gives the police the authority to ask a citizen to identify themselves who happen to be in downtown Toronto, and they've designated a whole area of downtown Toronto. And to have a police with the authority to force you to identify yourself without any cause whatever is frightening. And then it goes on to give them authority to search the person without any cause.
Which means the whole right to privacy and right to probable cause is gone on the search. You just have to be within an area.
Within that approach, as it's called the approach.
We'll learn later, that's a pretty flexible thing. Just what is that area?
That's right. So they could designate, for example, the whole of downtown Toronto as a public work, and then public protest would be prohibited.
I think it's kind of also extraordinary that it's not just police officers who can enforce this act. It's something they're calling guards. But the most important thing that then leads to is every person who gets appointed this way has the powers of a peace officer. They can turn almost anybody they want into a policeman.
That's right. And of course, we saw earlier this week or the previous week where there were a number of private security people that were going to come to Toronto to deal with the G20, and they weren't even licensed in Ontario, so that we've got people here that could be not licensed or they're quickly licensed. In other words, if people read that if they went downtown to protest, that some rent-a-cop guard could arrest them for whatever, neglecting to follow their instructions, then people may say, you know what, I don't need that. I think I'll stay home and so on. So the chilling effect is also crucial.
So the right of free assembly can be gone in a snap of cabinet's fingers.
In effect, a snap of cabinet's fingers behind closed doors.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Police Entertainment Division. We know that securing Toronto City Centre against all those anarchists and terrorists can get very boring. So we are here to remind you that everything is okay, that we are on your side, and that what we want to see in the next few days, we want to see a fair riot between the police and the protesters. We ask that no one gets truly hurt, because as we know, all this is international politics. It's all street theatre anyway, and we all know as well that being a policeman in central Toronto right now can be very stressful. So if you'd like to join us to do some yoga, we'll be doing some tantric meditation. We will even show you some nice new positions which you can take home and make your partner very happy with. All you need to do is speak to the man with the megaphone. We are the Love Police, and our job is to lower fear and raise love.